Hey, Brooks will be joining us here soon. He is at a local high school, and he is with an FFA group that will be asking a lot of questions. They are very excited to be with us. They're learning about our crop tour that is starting. The report is starting on Friday. We have had a lot of response to our survey so far. We are in week 1. The week 2 survey is available now. So to be watching our social media outlets and our daily market email for the week 2 survey that starts this afternoon. We've actually already had some responses to that, which is pretty exciting. Right now we're looking at Sterling's quote page. Some green on it, which is nice, and some red.
Some red here. If you like, we can see markets are really quiet in front of the report here. Crude oil is up, which that actually should be bullish for the grain. Here's the bad news. Gasoline's up another almost a little over 9 cents a gallon. Diesel was down to 3.76. It's back to 3.91. Natural gas is quiet. Stock market, this is the quietest it's been really in a couple of weeks. So that's probably not going to cause any harm. If you follow the livestock podcast, hogs are getting slaughtered. Ha ha.
Literally.
literally, where belly prices have dropped dramatically, and that should result in maybe bacon being a little bit cheaper at the grocery store eventually. Maybe.
Well, we like bacon at our house, so that's good.
Well, right now, the bellies are $1.35 a pound, but the problem is you have that raw belly, you have to cut it, package it, deliver it. Every one of those stops on the supply chain can induce inflation. And just because the end commodity eases up a little bit in price does not guarantee lower prices at the grocery store. I mean, if you think about it, a bushel of wheat right now, we'll look at good wheat. Minneapolis wheat is right now $12.65 a bushel. If you're making whole wheat bread, you can get 75 loaves, maybe a little more, out of 1 bushel of wheat. So if you divide $12.65 by 75 cents, well, you don't have a lot of wheat in that loaf of bread, really.
Right.
In fact, here, I'll do the math real quick. Well, my calculator will do the math real quick. That would be $12.65 divided by 75. Means you've got about 16 cents of wheat, give or take, in a loaf of bread.
Wow.
Which bread, the local Hy-Vee here, managed to sneak up from $2.89 to about $3.40. And that's made in a bakery right here in Omaha. It's a Rotella's. So it's not going a long way.
But I think that's interesting when you think about, how inflation is going, and maybe I'm oversimplifying this. So, correct me here, Sterling, but we're talking about the inflation rate is what percentage now?
It came in at 8 point. Here, we don't need to guess. We can get you the exact number here. It came in at 8.3 was the actual number. They were looking for 8.1. And if you take food and energy out, it was 6.2. Now down here.
But that's at each level, right? So, I mean, if you think about that, at each level of the chain, you're paying 8.3. So that's why people are seeing such an increase. I mean, overall.
Well,
right?
That's not quite right. This is consumer inflation. So this is a bundle of prices measured at the grocery store, at the car lot, the electric bill, everything like that. Now down here, the numbers we had today are the producer price indexes. And this is what it costs producers to get things. So this is a better view of the supply chain inflation, and that came out at 11.2, or actually 11%. It was 11.2 last month, and they revised it up to 11.5. So that's a better indication. Then the other thing, import prices. This is stuff that we import. They're looking for that to be 12.2. That comes out tomorrow. So all these numbers are very elevated. The one bit of good news, the final month-over-month number was 0.5, which was as expected, down from 1.4. Now, the food and energy was 0.4, but when you look at energy prices where they were last month versus this month, next month this number is going to be higher because diesel prices went through the roof, so did natural gas.
And now they're talking about I just read this yesterday or the day before, that they're talking about a shortage of diesel. Like, there's a shortage.
There is. They're having to move. Get this, they're trucking jet fuel in from Ohio into LaGuardia Airport and into JFK in New York. They're having to truck diesel fuel in from Chicago into the Northeast to get diesel because the refineries on the East Coast, they don't have that much capacity. And the biggest diesel refinery on the East Coast was outside of Philadelphia. Its main source of the feedstock it uses, because it didn't use just raw crude oil, it used this refined, semi-refined stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All of it came from Russia. So that plant, the way it's formulated and the way it's set up, can't run on it could only run on a particular feedstock. Since it can't get that feedstock anymore, it's out of business.
So, oh wow. We're okay.
So that is a really interesting thing here. Let's go ahead and stop sharing the screens here. I think Brooks is joining us.
Can you hear me?
Hey, Brooks.
We can hear you.
Are we recording?
We are. We are
right.
live recording.
Well, you've got us from a different setting today, and you can tell by my backdrop, I am not at my home office or my office. I'm actually at the Carmi White County FFA classroom. Would you call it that, guys? There's lots of awards on here, and I've got a really unruly audience around here. So my apologies early if they get out of line.
We're excited to have them today.
So, Christy, if you don't care, I'm going to kind of tell these guys exactly what we're doing just very quickly. So each month, the federal government issues a WASDE report. It's WASDE. It's a World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimate. So we're going to talk about things like how much corn was produced and used last year, soybeans and wheat. And I'm joined on here with Sterling Smith. He's our director of research, and he's out of Omaha. And then we've got folks on here from all across the country that are listening. So as we go along, we're pretty open to any questions that you guys might have. But the report is released at 11 o'clock. So we're just going to kind of talk about things leading up to that report that have affected world markets. At 11, we'll get the report released. Now, a lot of times when this happens, our markets in regards to prices, they change pretty rapidly. So Sterling's on here. He's got the quotes in front of him. And when that data is released, oftentimes we see those markets move. So we want to talk about the numbers themselves and also how the prices react. Now, you've probably seen on the news, we've talked about Ukraine a lot. And the impact that Ukraine is really having on the world markets. They export corn and soybeans and a lot of wheat, just like we do in the United States. And there's a fear that some of that doesn't get exported out into the market. And this is really going to be one of our first looks to see how our government has adjusted their production numbers. There are some people planting in Ukraine. It's just a matter of whether they can actually grow that crop and get it to the market. So that's what we're doing here over the next few minutes, and it should be a pretty big report in regards to market movement, but we will find out.
So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen and we can talk about a few things that we do have going on already before the report. This morning we had a CONAB report. CONAB is Brazil's version of the USDA, and they count their soybean production at 123.83 million tons, which was right in line with the survey, and their corn production came in at 116.20, which was a little bit better, nothing too shocking there, and the planted acres and all that. This will be their final look at their crop, as they're pretty much done with everything there. There may be one more update to the corn production. Now down here we have export sales came out this morning, and they weren't very good. We'll save the stronger language for later, but they were, as you can see here, total corn sales were 239,000 tons versus 1.52 million last week. So that was a big swing and a miss. Soybeans, 1.14 last week, 221 this week again. Terrible. Wheat, we won't even go there. That's so bad. And cotton, not even half of what they were previous week. Part of this was it was a holiday week in China. We did not get any flash sales, and that just shows how big of a buyer they can be. And they were in this morning and bought, 60,000 tons of new crop, or 60,000 tons of old crop and 600,000 tons of new crop. So they're back with a vengeance, so I would expect to see these numbers improve. Now, this is what the expectations are. The number that we really are going to key on first is this ending stocks number. So the average survey is 1.3 million for ending stocks for corn, which that puts us in the bullish zone. We got a guy at FC Stone named Arlen who pegged it at 988, which is frighteningly bullish to start the year. And the high number is 1654. My numbers came in right around, well, here, actually, you look at my other computer here, and I can get you those numbers. My numbers were not that extreme, but I have to say for putting together a balance sheet, this was difficult, particularly the global ones, because you just don't know how to put the Ukraine in there, and you don't know how the USDA is going to do that. So my ending stocks guess was 1.18 on corn for the new crop. So, and that was using.
Let me stop you real quick and then do some explaining here to the group about what we just talked about. So what Sterling's talking about is our leftovers. We talked a little bit about carryout earlier. Joseph, you weren't in here yet, but it's our leftovers of what we have left over after we use everything in the United States. And the reason Ukraine plays that role, Camden, you talked about that, is because, they're also an exporter too. So if they can't export, that corn has to come from someplace in the U.S. So whenever I mentioned that this was a big report because we're going to factor in Ukraine, we really don't have any idea. And 1 billion bushels sounds like a big number, okay, like a lot left over. It's actually not. So the market really kind of feels comfortable if that market was like 1.7 to 1.8 billion. That would be a good spot for it to be. So it's got about half as much as it would really like, a little bit over half, but we have no idea. We're really, like Sterling mentioned, it's really tough to try to calculate what's going to be left over. Go ahead, Sterling.
Yeah, because the one thing we don't really know is up here, you see corn yield. The survey's at 179.9. Now, the USDA Outlook Conference put this number at 181 bushels an acre. But we've had some ideas change about acreage being planted, meaning we may see fewer corn acres versus more soybean acres. When that happens, that tends to be good, tends to be a little better for yields. So that's a big piece of guesswork. And last year we were at 177. Now with soybeans, we had ending stocks. The average guess is 312, and the low number is 200. That's me. I put it at 200 simply because when I looked at what our sales commitments are versus what we've actually shipped, it's entirely conceivable the USDA may be forced to bump that number up. And we have a few more exports because,
these guys are all pretty much corn and soybean farmers. They come from those types of farms in the room here. And we talked about soybeans, and so we're talking about a lot fewer bushels, right? So we're at 1 billion bushels. Like 1 billion is what we think the report might say. This goes all the way down to 200 million to 388 million. And the market kind of wants that to be 350 to 400. That's where it feels pretty comfortable at. So you can see we're a lot lower than those estimates. So that's a signal of really strong demand, primarily out of China.
Yeah, you can see right now, last month we came in at 260 on the beans. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Now, how these numbers are determined, it's, you have demand and then you have production. There's still questions about how many acres we're actually going to plant. Are we seeing guys switch out of those soybeans and into corn? Because we had this prospective planning report where we were going to be beans everywhere and tight on corn. Well, we'll see how the world plays out on that. The other thing that makes this report really interesting is, where are we going to be with world ending stocks and all this? Because we have, a range from 297 to 282, or excuse me, we had a low of 282 and a low of 307. Now, folks down here in this lower bucket, and you can count me in there, I subtracted out the Ukraine. At 307, you're leaving the Ukraine unchanged. So sometimes people are just guessing what the USDA is going to do. Sometimes it's like, what do we think is going to happen? And here for soybeans, notice 87 to 107. That's a 20 million ton difference. That's huge.
Sterling, you mentioned, the impact of Ukraine, something we talked about in the marketing meeting last time, and also maybe in the previous WASDE is we're just uncertain about how many bushels that Ukraine can get to the export market. So there's a city on the Black Sea called Odessa, and we kind of said, keep your ears open if you hear the national media talk about Odessa being bombed or destroyed. That's going to really incapacitate the ability for Ukraine to get crop moved out of the country. And in the last 48 hours, we've started to hear that name mentioned in media outlets. So it had been really untouched. That's where our ports are. So a company that you guys might be familiar with, like Cargill, there's a Cargill in Mount Vernon, Indiana. Cargill has an export facility there. And of course, it's shut down, but it would be facilities like that load big ocean going vessels that, we're worried about that infrastructure being destroyed.
Yeah, I saw a report, and it was later confirmed on Reuters that there was a hypersonic missile attack in Odessa at the port.
So if you just joined us, it seems like I'm talking to a crowd. Again, I'm at the Carmine White County High School, and we're in the FFA, and we've got a few members. It's a busy day here at the school with awards day, graduation stuff going on. So I'm glad to be able for these guys to join us for this.
Couple of things here. We're about 3 minutes from the report coming out. We do offer podcasts. One in the morning that covers morning market activity, another one that covers livestock specifically, and another one at the end of the day that does a market wrap-up that covers all the markets. The one in the morning is a couple of minutes. The one in the afternoon can be anywhere from 4 to 15 minutes, depending on what I'll have to talk about. Another thing that you can follow with this is our virtual crop tour. And I think Brooks is very proud of this, and I think he wants to, plug his book here on national TV. So
yeah, you know what, I do. So what we do is, obviously we can't be across the country all the time, and we have got all kinds of contributors sending us pictures as to the crop conditions. So we got lots of pictures of planters, some pictures of wet fields. That's going to be out tomorrow, and it's going to hit some national media outlets. We've got some good data behind it. Christy has been busy in the surveying process. We've had a record number of surveys. We feel really, really good about the information that we're going to release. I'll give you a sneak peek into what we're seeing. We're going to have kind of a Kentucky Derby theme, and I'll leave it at that. But this 2022 crop sure looks like a long shot right now. We've got extreme drought down in Texas. I mean, some places it's hard to imagine have not had rain since June. North Dakota, it seemed like they just went from winter to summer. No spring, it's wet. They had snow in some parts of it last week. And then you guys kind of know around here, like it's perfect to plant today, but we're about 4 weeks behind where we would like to be. So it's all getting put in the ground. So it's a mixed bag. It's not that it's a doomsday forecast for the crop, but we've got a lot of hurdles in front of us. So tune in tomorrow for that. Christy, let's talk about where you can get that virtual crop tour. And also I'll let you kind of explain to people, because we've only got about a minute here, how they can contribute to that.
Yes, I just put the link in the chat, so make sure you click on that so you can go check that out. You can participate by taking part in that survey. It is less than 2 minutes. Really doesn't take any time at all, and just share some information about what's going on in your field or in your area. It's really super quick. Just share your story with us.
And we're about 30 seconds from report release right now. Corn is up a couple of cents. December's up 4. New crop beans unchanged. July soybeans up about 7. The environment has changed just in the time of this phone call. Crude oil's still up, but a massive sell program did hit the stock market, and the Dow has dropped about 400 points from where it was when we started this conversation.
Wow.
So volatility is out there, and we talked about that because interest rates affect this. This affects risk profiles. And here we have the report, and starting with corn, let's see, corn ending stocks, 1.360 was the winning number there. Soybean ending stocks came in at 310, so that was pretty much in line with expectations. And total wheat ending stocks came in at 619. And the market reaction is here. I'll switch over to that here real quick. Let's see. Stop sharing.
While you're sharing, Sterling, so we're looking at a 1.1 number on corn. It actually came out 1.36, so more stocks than we thought. Soybeans were about in line. Wheat was about in line as well. So now we're going to take a look at these markets to see what they got.
Yeah, we're trying to jump over here right now, and let's see. That's not it. That's not it. Well, we're having a little technical difficulty with that, but right now corn is up about 4 3/4, 6 1/4 on new crop. Soybeans up a whole 2 cents. New crop is down 2 3/4, and wheat is up about 13 to 14 cents.
So really quiet.
So the market has not really jumped on this in a manner that we would normally kind of expect.
Yeah, so we set this thing up, and guys, this is usually how the markets work. We expect something great big in the market. Sometimes it disappoints us. It usually can make a fool out of us sometimes. And, you know, we kind of think maybe that 1.36 number is a little bit high on corn. But time will tell, you know.
Time will definitely tell, because they're going to need to adjust this. The yield, interesting. They posted the corn yield per acre. Let's see what we got here for a corn yield. Is that right? They came in at 177, matching last year. Interesting.
That's pretty amazing, yeah.
And soybeans, 51.5, about as expected. Let's see here how the ending stocks globally looked. Globally, 305. That was the top end of the box. I haven't looked at the hard report yet, but that tells me they have not discounted anything for the Ukraine.
Wow.
Means they kicked the can down the road again.
Let me ask a quick question, and I think that we know the answer to it, but in China, we're seeing a lot of COVID pop back up, and people actually in the big cities are held in their apartments where like their food and their medicines are delivered, but they're not allowed to go to work. And what that's done is it's shut down a lot of the ports. And so if you see a map of all the boats and vessels that are waiting to be unloaded, there's literally thousands of them that are still anchored and not able to get unloaded because the people can't go to work. Sterling, it sure seems like it would be way too early to weigh that impact in these numbers, but something has had to, it looks like to me, with a lower yield with the Ukraine situation, with our exports, poor this week. Is there any impact you think we're seeing from that yet, or is that something that we could see in the future?
Well, we're seeing a definite impact in the crude oil market. There are ships waiting to unload crude. When they reopen, global crude demand is going to go up meaningfully. And that means crude oil prices are going to go up, and it means those components are going to go up. It also means that they're going to be able to process, for the most part, their food processing, soybean processing is working, but the ports will be working better, so that will allow them to take more things in. If anything, that's going to cut, our ending stocks numbers both globally and for the U.S., assuming, they come back sooner rather than later. One thing here, wheat numbers, Chicago is up 25 cents now. Kansas City up 26. I don't have real-time Minneapolis, but I have to assume that's probably running about 30 higher. So that would mean that we are probably looking at some ending stocks numbers for wheat that are a little bit less than what we would normally expect here. Let's see what we got here. Let's see here for wheat ending stocks, 619. A little bit of a miss, but nothing too big. Yield per acres improved a little bit from last year, which isn't surprising. We have a lot of risk right now, particularly in the spring wheat. It's going in late, ground soggy. It's not ideal situations. So if we don't see some weather changes up in the Dakotas, that may create a bit of a problem here.
I think we both expected a little bit more fireworks out of this report.
Yeah, that's something, whenever you promote one of these things and you talk about it, all of a sudden you find yourself, with the risk of having a dud. And this report is, I'm not going to say it's a dud, but corn's moved a grand total of about a nickel. So we are pretty close to dud status here. And I'll bring up the quotes right here, right now.
While you bring that up, Sterling, we've got the experts right here in front of me. So I know we got kind of a house divided between John Deere and Case. Am I right? All right. So I know your dad is planting today, right? And you know about how many acres of corn he plants each year? He's probably got about, does he have 800 to 1,000 acres in the ground?
Probably around 800 right now.
Right, about 800. And really, you guys have actually been planting some food plots, probably, haven't you? And
We planted a few, not too many.
So some wildlife food plots. They teach that class here in the ag department too, and conditions are really, really good right now to plant into. So, Joseph, how are you guys getting along? You're the one red guy in here. So,
Yeah.
Can Case stuff keep up with the John Deere stuff? Or
It should.
all right, I'm just double checking. So, how's your planting progress?
It's going decent, but we just had to wait so long. But now that we're going, hopefully we can just keep continuing planting.
So there you guys have it from Southern Illinois. It's rapidly getting put into the ground. Rapidly, but we're just a little bit behind, Sterling, but we've still got great hope. So you might as well factor that into the markets. We just go ahead and call the media outlets right now. You got it firsthand right here.
Yeah, I would expect we were a little bit behind around here, but we've had 3 magnificent days in a row, and it's supposed to rain tonight. So I imagine they are getting it done just as quickly as they can to get it in front of that rain that's due tonight and maybe a little bit this weekend. And we finally managed to get temperatures above 80 degrees. We had been very cold. And, well, not very cold, but, too cold to plant. So I think we're seeing some progress. December corn now, we're up 16 3/4, and July is up about 9. Usually we see big volatility spikes right when the report comes out. I think some of the guys in their computers may have turned off their algorithmic trading simply because nobody really knew how this report was going to come out. Usually we have a fairly good lean on where things are going, but with the global situation, it's a little hard to figure out just what the USDA may say about what's going on with Ukraine. And now we've got Kansas City wheat up almost 40 cents, Chicago wheat up another 35.5. So it looks like the bulls are kind of grabbing hold. one thing, the dollar index is at 104.70. It's up 85 today, which normally that's a bit of a headwind for commodities, but clearly the grain market does not care. Interesting. So, Brooks, I understand the president's in Illinois today. Are you going to have a conference with him?
Well, I'm not. He didn't make his way down here to Carmi, believe it or not. I know that had to be high on his list of expectations, but I think he might have stayed in friendlier territory up north.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. We'll see how much E15 actually gets blended. That's one of his ideas to reduce energy inflation, is to have E15 available in the summer. Most of the gas pumps around here, and the busiest place to buy gas here is at Costco. And both of those, they have 14 pumps at each one, and there's a line. Sometimes it causes a traffic jam into the serving streets. So they don't have any E15 pumps.
So he did make a couple announcements though yesterday. He announced some double crop efforts and some domestic fertilizer grants. Do you think any of that's going to make any difference on?
The only thing you can viably double crop is really where you grow winter wheat. You can double crop soybeans.
Mm-hmm.
In the best of circumstances, those are not the world's best producing soybeans. Okay, they're not 50 bushel an acre beans. They might be 25 or 30 in Kansas. The problem with that is, if you've looked at the conditions for winter wheat, which it would be Kansas in particular, the conditions are not really very good, and they're not getting better. And my guess is we're still looking at a La Nina at least through the summer, is what I'm gathering from my weather guys. Conditions will not be all that conducive to planting them and growing them. So I really don't know how much they could really add to the soybean production.
Well, I think I've got a crowd here at the last week of school. Christy, you know how things get with these guys. And so they've been quiet for like 25 minutes, and I'm gonna let them bust out here. And their FFA sponsor isn't around, so they might even get to leave early for lunch or something like that here shortly. So I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and kind of a unique experience. We'll have to do this more often in the future. And maybe down the road, I can even turn the cameras around and let you see their smiling faces. So I'm going to sign off from Carmi, and you guys have a great day.
That sounds great. Thank you for joining us today, Brooks, and thanks for letting those kids be with us today. And if they have any questions, make sure you have them, share those with us.
You know what? Let me ask just real quick. So, guys, any questions after what you? Yes, sir.
So do you think the parts, say Case and John Deere parts, do you think the demand for parts because of COVID, do you think that's affecting the yield and how they're going to get stuff to the?
Wow, that's a great question. And it's definitely one I'm probably not qualified to answer, but I would say that it doesn't seem like it. The question was, and I'll repeat it, for like Case and John Deere parts. So if you have a breakdown, how has COVID affected the ability to get those parts to the farms out there? And I think that, Camden, I really think that it probably hasn't slowed us down, but one thing it's done is it's increased our costs. So whenever farmers put their budget together, they've got a repair and maintenance cost. And I would have to think that in some cases, because of what you just mentioned, those reasons, our repair and maintenance could go up ×2 from where it was at last year or the year before. That's an excellent question. Any other questions? Nothing? All right. They're anxious to go, Christy. So we're going to get out of here. You guys have a good day.
Thanks, Brooks. Thanks, kids.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Sterling. And thank you all for joining us today. Do want to remind you that we have our marketing meeting next Thursday at 9 a.m. So be watching our social media and our daily market email to receive that invite. Have a great day.
Thank you. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and make sure to read tonight's report. I will go over this rather sanguine WASDE report, and the fact they didn't address anything now just means more trouble later.